Good morning. Today we are going to go into the art of phrasing and talk about how this can really impact your ability to take your solos to a whole nother level and really communicate something maybe you've never been able to do before. So I'm going to get into this right away. Before I do, I thought maybe I would just play a little bit. And perhaps after going through the lesson here today, you can go back and listen to this impromptu little jam, and maybe you'll get some ideas with additional ideas for phrasing. So here's a medium shuffle in G. I have a C harp. All right, you get the idea. Let's talk a little bit. I put out a video recently that I was trying to give 3 tips for improving your ability to improvise, and they were long notes contrasted with these staccato short riffs, clean lines versus textured ideas or textured melodies or melodic lines, and dynamics, taking that volume and really learning the art of swelling your volume inside of a note, a riff, or even kind of overall in your improvisation piece. So one element that somebody brought up, and I thought it was a really good call, was and space and phrasing. And of course, that's great. So let's just add this to the list of things that you can think about. And I encourage you to basically just pick one at a time when you work on this, when you're going to work on your improvisation. Don't just turn on a track and arbitrarily jam. That's cool for a couple minutes, but then have a focus. To me, I'm going to talk about this loosely, and if I can see comments or whatever pop up, I'll try to answer some questions in a minute. But to me, a lot of this comes down to language. I compare playing music and improvising to speaking and singing, which I'll talk a little bit about. But just right now, as I'm talking, if you listen to the way I phrase my sentences, some of the words are put together quickly, some have more space. And it's the space we have to examine carefully, I think, and experiment with to see what we're missing in our playing. So as you think, again, about somebody who's giving us if I were up here just going like this, today we are going to talk about, after a while, the monotone speaking with the same amount of space, you'd be asleep. So it's really no different. When you're playing, just think about the conversation you would have with somebody when you're really excited, Listen, there's 8 ways to say a sentence, Listen, I need to talk to you. Or listen, I need to talk to you. Or listen, I need to talk to you. I might be able to do a little bit about the overblows and the riffs. So you have to think about what it means. It changes the meaning of what you're saying as you experiment with the phrasing. Listen to singers. My biggest tip is listen to the way somebody sings a vocal line and work on trying to recreate that on the harmonica, especially if you're going to be soloing in a song that has a beautiful melody. You learn the melody first, right? If there's a gorgeous melody throughout a song, you're learning the melody, but then learn how to really change that melody. This is the art of syncopation and experimenting with the dynamics inside of that rhythm and how you can do this. Oh, crud. I missed that. Some messages, blah, blah, blah. I hate this, guys. I don't know how to get back to the, oh, there we are. How do you get a better anticipating chord changes, and should you have a few go-to notes over the riffs? Okay. Let me take a note of this. How do you get better at anticipating chord changes, and should you have a few go-to notes or riffs over the 4 and 5? The way to get better at anticipating chord changes is to be just listening to music a lot, to where it's just in you. Because it's not just about 12-bar blues. As you discover, the more you play harmonica, or any instrument, especially if you stick to a genre like blues, there's many different structures to the music itself. So by listening to it over and over, it just gets in your DNA. You just sort of have it. And yeah, you want to be able to anticipate and pull in changes with your playing sometimes. You know, let me just demonstrate that. You can lead in a chord change. Here's the 1, 1. Here comes the 4. You kind of like grab a long note before that chord change. It's kind of helping listeners anticipate that change. And then after the change happens, maybe change that up. Like I cut that note. So let's talk about how much space to leave. How are you supposed to work this as a practice point? Phrasing is like, when I learned how to phrase, I was thinking about this. Sorry, I'm reading these comments. If you're watching this as a playback, check out the live comments. For me, it was purely, there is no formula. I'll give you a formula that you can kind of experiment with in a second, but it was just experimentation. No one taught me, here's how you phrase or work on phrasing. And I don't think anybody got that lesson. I don't think many people seek that as a lesson. I don't think that's being offered. It's not a common topic that we talk about. It's through the examples. I'm going to loosely give you a formula, okay? So check it out. Like, if you're like, I need something. I'm the guy that I need some structure here. One idea, and there's some good stuff coming, so stick with me here. And if you can't stay for this live broadcast all the way, check out the posted recording of this stream. So how can we get better at this? Well, one formula. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that comment. One formula could be to begin to implement a simple count of rest. Rest is when we don't play. And again, what we don't play is ultimately shaping the notes we play. It's more important to examine when you're not playing, in my opinion, than it is to examine what you're playing. How you're playing it matters more than that, but it's the space. It's the space. So you might just count 2 beats and experiment like this. Yeah, less might be more. Yeah, that's true, Art. So how can we do it? Check it out. If we just use 2 beats rest as an experiment, it would sound like this. I play an idea as long as I want, and I stop, and I tap my foot twice. That's 2 beats, and that's a simple rest. Now that formula alone for somebody that never thought about phrasing might be a huge eye-opener, and they're like, wow, just consciously making the effort to, oh, cool. How you doing, Mike? Mike Tyson's in the house. What's up, Mike? So that might be helpful, but you get boring and predictable, right? If we always left two beats. So then what you want to do is just experiment, and you might just do this. I'm going to write this down, and I'm going to do it for you. I'm just going to demo it quickly. I'm going to take 2 beats, 4 beats, 1 beat, 6 beats, 3 beats. I'm just going to follow that formula as my rests. Hey, Eric. Every time I stop playing, I'm going to go to these numbers as my beats of rest. And when I finish with this, I'm going to go on to a different topic. But check this out. 2, 4, 1, 6, 3. I'll count them out for you. Show you my hands when I'm doing this. Let's just start this back here. Let it come back around to the 12 bars here at the top of the 12 bar. So you can do this with me. 2 beats. Now, when I'm playing live, am I counting this? No, not at all. I'm not thinking, I'm going to leave 2, I'm going to leave 5. But in practice, if you practice it, I think that you'll find that you just start to develop these instincts where you're like, you learn to wait for it. Next idea I got for you guys. Examine the upbeat and the downbeat. Right on. You're welcome. Glad to hear you're digging it. When you put a rest in music and you decide to come back in, whether you mean to or not, or whether you've been thinking about it or not, you're either entering on the downbeat or the upbeat or somewhere kind of in between. The downbeat is when your foot's just going down. So you might rest and come back in on the downbeat, which is a very common way to play blues. It would sound like this. And they call that coming in right on the beat, okay? And that's what's going on with that. But when you come in on an upbeat, when the foot's up, it kind of changes the action of this note and forces your listener to sit there and go, hey, that was a little less predictable. That caught my attention. What's coming next? Kind of, tell you what, this becomes easier the more you stop thinking about it. So I think the goal would be to just naturally experiment and record yourself and listen for those moments where you're like, hey, that really worked. Check this out. This idea kind of goes along with what I'm saying. This is one of the best things that I've ever discovered, and I'm sure it was a tip from somebody over the years, somewhere at some point along the way. Hear a full phrase, hear an idea, a riff, a lick, a phrase, but don't play all of it. Now this means you've got to be able to hear it in your mind. Let's say this was my riff. I just left out part of it. So little rests in between a riff. Now we're talking about the phrasing not between ideas, but the space between the idea itself. What kind of space are you using in the riff itself? See how I left out that part? So I'm often hearing an idea, but I'm just leaving out a little section of it, okay? I'm leaving out often an end part, like if I'm thinking, I might leave out just a tiny little portion. Just experiment. I can't tell you how far this will take you if you really take this to heart. Hear ideas that you don't play. I call this retraining your instincts. Thanks, Thomas. I call it retraining your instincts, denying your instincts. Right now, we don't want to typically deny instincts, right? We want to develop good instincts and trust them. But when you don't have great instincts, you're going to learn how to, in my opinion, deny those instincts, meaning you might think, I'm going to come in right here, but just don't. Just wait a second. See what happens when you deny your current natural instinct and then wait for it. You're going to find, I have found at least, that when I do this consistently, the music tells me when to come in. And that sounds a little hokey for some of you maybe, but I never have to think anymore. Where am I finding the words to my musical? Great question. Still trying to figure out where to find the words to your musical conversation. How you doing, Francisco? The words don't matter, my friend. In other words, the notes don't matter. You know, yeah, there's some bad note choices. You could land on a bad note. I get that. But overall, it's not about what notes will I play. It's a matter of how you're going to play them. You're a sound shaper. Your goal is to take tone and sound and shape it and put your emotion into it. The shape is coming from the emotion, the way we stretch a bend. So hear a full phrase, but play a portion of it. I could go on and on about that. Music's a language, though, and you really got to study it like that. Thank you, Frank. And I really want to just encourage everyone out there as you work through developing your phrasing. It begins, for me it did at least, with experimentation and just having fun. I'm gonna try to really get creative here. Listen to the way I'm using long notes versus short notes. Quick, tiny little moments of space. Even players that play like a bunch of notes, they don't have a lot of pauses. Great players do put in space. You just need to listen to it. Yes, if you're getting in a rut, leaving stuff out is going to help. So listening to a great player, they might do something like this. See that little space? Now, I think the best way to go through this is by example. You know, when you want to get great at phrasing, start to just actively listen, which means put down the harmonica, turn on some of your favorite singers. Let me give you some, like, put on some Little Willie John if you don't know who Little Willie John is. A few different ways, like, yeah, good call there, putting the emphasis in different spots. I'm going to come back and read some of these and maybe make a follow-up video if I need to. But yeah, let's talk about what that was a good comment. So I think about foreign language when I learned Spanish. That was my major in college. It's all about where does the accent go? I found that very interesting because then if I knew that... if I know where the accents go, I felt like I could then get I had a knack for foreign language, which led me to music, by the way. That's what helped me, I think, prep. That's true. All right, so putting the emphasis in different spots could sound like this. Let's see. That 3-draw got that little bent note, got that note. You know, you start to just put a little more dynamic range on one note, and I think that's what we're getting at here. So I'm going to leave you guys with these thoughts. I missed a bunch of questions. Let me just scroll a couple of these. This is not easy to do on a phone. Man, come on. This is really hard to do for some reason on my phone, y'all. You guys want to just pop up a question? I can read them now that I'm not trying to explain some things. You're welcome. If anybody has any questions, now's the time to shoot it. I'll leave you with these thoughts, though, until a question pops up. Really think about this space and not leaving even amounts of space always, right? That would be boring and predictable. So practice the art of a half of a beat, where you just go... instead of... There you go. Some busking in Portland. And think about your relationship, the space, I'll leave you with this, the space that you create, think about it from the perspective of a musical phrase itself, the solo itself, and just phrase to phrase, riff to riff. Really, I think people forget about the impact of just this long space. If you have a slow blues, you better be leaving a lot of space because it's cool. Slow blues, I think, is one of the things we talk about as being one of the hardest things to solo to because you're wide open and exposed. But in the slow blues, for me, I think it's the funnest.
This is the slow blues.
For getting into a solo and ending one? I mean, no. Pick a starting note. Not really. For getting out of it, I think the only thing that comes to mind is just making sure that whatever you said, whatever the second to the last thing you said is, make sure that the final thing makes sense of everything that you said or that last thing, that you can resolve that in an area that makes sense. But no, I don't really have a tip for that, Eric, because I think the goal is to get ourselves out of thinking so much and just go for it. So here's a slow blues. Maybe we'll end with this. I'm really going to push the boundaries here. I'm going to try to...
From the 5 in the key of G.
I'm going to really see what I can come up with, and maybe the examples will speak better than what I've described. Maybe when you think you've waited for it, wait a little longer. See, here's what's cool. You put on a slow blues, it's fun as hell to go crazy over this stuff. And, to put it on, it's fun to sit here and go fast, right? Because it's slow, doesn't mean you can't go. Still in time, right? But in my opinion, if you sit there as a strategy and only do that, right on. If you only do that, you've lost me. For the same reason, the guy that comes up to you goes, "Hey man, how's it going? Hey, guess what? Let me tell you a couple things. There's this thing going on." He's going a million miles an hour. What was that last comment? You can't only follow that for so long. So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Is just switch it up, have fun, If you're going to go bananas and go really fast on a slow blues, maybe hang on one note for a long time, leave like a crack of space in there, and come back and hit them with the rest of the really fast stuff, and now you're creating a little more balance. If you'd like to check out the backing tracks like this, which I think are the best, the acoustic ones, because there's so much room. There's not, even some of the jam tracks with full band stuff, it's like, they're busy sometimes. Right on. These are found at harmonica123.com. You can just type in the search bar, top right-hand corner of the homepage, acoustic tracks, or just acoustic jam tracks, and you'll find them. They're really inexpensive, and there's 20 tracks. So check that out. I hope this helps y'all. Thanks for joining me live today. Come see me at the Global Blues Harmonica Summit, please. Blowyourharp.com, February 9th. Rob Paparosi and PT Gazelle. Expanding your blues, expanding outside of just 12-bar blues. So thanks again. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you soon.